Terima kasih, Mbak.
Sore Mas Iman.
Sore Mas Adit, Mas Iwan.
Nah, bisa join ya Mas.
Ya,
Selamat sore Pak.
mudah-mudahan lancar nih.
Amin, amin. Oke.
Pak Aryo belum.
Recording in progress.
Bapak,
Sebentar lagi kita akan mulai, jadi tolong nyalakan kameranya. Terima kasih.
Mbak, mohon maaf itu mungkin Pak Aryo linknya dia ke attendee ya. Bisa dicek nggak Aryo Sasongko?
Oke, sebentar kita cari, nanti kita masukkan ke panelis. Terima
Oke.
kasih. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Financial System Development in Emerging Countries session. Without any further ado, please welcome our chair, Mr. Iman Gunadi, to open the session. Mr. Gunadi, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Please welcome to this special session on financial system development in emerging countries. Thank you for joining us. To all of you over the world, this session got 3 papers. We believe that we can learn more new insight on how to develop financial system in particular aspect, especially financial integration, understanding sovereign green sukuk, and also new stress tests when we are facing some new challenges in financial system. This session has 1 hour. What we will do is I let all 3 papers are presented first, and then we move to the part of question and answers. All the questions should be written in the Q&A chat box, and I'll take some of them or summarize some similar question or something that need to be clarified more. So the first paper is financial integration and financial system development in emerging markets and developing economies. This paper will be presented by Mr. Fiskara Indawan from Bank Indonesia Institute. Mr. Fiskara, you'll have 15 minutes, and I'll let you know when your time is 3 minutes remain. Mr. Indawan, the time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Iman Gunadi, the head of research group in Bank Indonesia Institute. All of the participants, today I will present about the financial integration in developing countries. Here my presentation. At first, the motivation for the outline for the presentation would be for include in 6 sections. The first one is introduction, this is problem, the objective, and the second one. And the section in number 3 is research review and previous studies. And we talk about the empirical studies and then the estimation result and the conclusion. At first, the introduction is about what is the motivation behind this paper. The paper is coming from several studies, several publications said that emerging market and developing countries in, especially in emerging countries, they are having as part of the main engine of world economic growth. But on the other side, some people said that Sahai in 2015 that said the level in the level of financial development in emerging countries and development is far below in advanced economies. And then at the same time, after we saw in the after global crisis in 2008 and 2009, there are many capital inflows coming to the financial market in emerging market and developing economies. That is why we see that it is important for the developing countries and emerging markets should have bring more advantage for this inflow, the capital inflow, to develop their financial development. That is why the research problem for this paper is talking about how every emerging countries and developing economies in the world should be able to take advantage to utilize the capital inflow to increase their financial development. Therefore, the objective for the paper is talking about to explore the effect of the composition of the capital inflows in developing the financial market, the financial system in developing countries and emerging economies. So we see that in the literature review, there are many studies and previous paper about the discussion in what is the theoretic background in the financial development. The first is Rajan and Zingales in 2013 that said the countries that open their economies should have been enjoy developed financial system, and therefore that many papers have studied the role of financial integration or financial globalization in developing financial development. But there are many papers, recent papers, stated that this measure is not good enough to measure the whole function of financial development. Therefore, in the 2012, the IMF with World Bank pioneered the new measurement of the financial development. And then in the 1999, Lens and Milesi-Ferretti have also introduced the new measure of financial integration, which is now has been used widely by the IMF. And then the empirical study for this paper, actually the contribution for this paper is about using the new measure of financial integration and the financial development introduced by the IMF as a new standard for the measurement of financial development. The empirical study for this paper, I use a dynamic panel GMM estimation, which is in order to get to capture the dynamic feature of the dependent variable, so that it will capture the dynamic feature. And then on the right hand side, we see on this paper, we want to know the effect of the financial integration, which is measured by its composition of capital inflow to the developing the 9 index of financial development using by the IMF. In this paper, I use 79 countries for in emerging countries from Asia, Africa, Europe, and Latin America, and it covers from its long span years from 1979 to 2019. And the estimation result by using the panel GMM, the dynamic panel GMM, we see from the estimation we see that the financial development here is, we see that financial development liabilities, we use the liability side because we want to know the impact of the inflow. That is why by using the estimation result, we see that the FDI, foreign direct investment liabilities, they are significantly affect the whole system of financial index. That is why we see that from this result, we see that financial development inflow, they can significantly affect the financial development in emerging countries, and especially they affect all of the aspect of financial development, which include the financial institution and the financial market, and then the financial of each of them are categories also in its debt and its access and its efficiency. From this result, we see that foreign direct investment, they are significantly contribute to enhance or increase the developing financial development in emerging countries. And then for the debt, in this paper, we use the debt, which is proxied or represented by the external debt. We see that from this result, we see the countries in emerging countries that have if they have more external debt, they will have more increase in the financial development and financial institution, or also in the financial market. And then especially they have developed in the developing in financial market, financial institution efficiency, and the financial market development. Here we separate between the financial institution and the financial market in order to get a good result for each category. The financial institution is about the banking, and the financial market is about the debt and stock market. And then the in the debt and equity side, you see that the equity, the inflow in the form of equity, they also significant in contributing to increase the depth of the financial development, and then the financial institution, and then the financial market. All of these aspects are concluded that countries with increase in the financial equity on the liability side, they will have developed their financial market and financial development as all. The conclusion for this paper, we see that the financial integration, which is proxied by the composition of capital inflow, they have a positive and statistically significant in developing all aspects of financial development. I guess this is that's the main finding for this paper. And then the FDI inflow, as the largest portion of the capital inflow, is closely associated with financial debt, financial institution debt access and efficiency, and then also the financial market, which means that this finding stated that countries with high developing in the high increase in the foreign direct investment, they also have a good or developed financial system, which is expressed in the debt, the increase of the banking system, and then the stock and financial system. And also countries with more external debt, they also enjoy the financial institution and then the financial market. And then the equity side, the portfolio equity, which is the smallest portion among the financial institution, is closely related to financial institution debt access and efficiency. That is mean that portfolio countries with portfolio investment equity, they will have more banking, development, and then more banking in excess and more efficient banking, and also the financial market. But financial market, they also just the depth of financial market and then the excess of financial market. I guess that's the paper, the finding of the paper. On overall, we see that the conclusion for this paper, we consider that countries in emerging market, they have to increase their financial development. How? From this market, there are many arguments that countries should open their economies to the financial globalization. But there are countries that said that by opening financial integration to their economy to other financial globalization, that will put more dangerous in the economy, because there are many emerging countries are experiencing crisis, especially in the Asian market in 1998 or in 2008. There are when the normalization, there are many countries in emerging market suffer depreciation of their currency. But at most, this is in the long run. We see that from this paper, we see countries with more open their economy to the financial globalization, they will have enjoy their increase their financial development. I guess that's the main point for this paper, Mr. Iman Gunadi. I will be open for discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Indawan. The second paper is Understanding the Environmental Risk Premium of Financial Securities, Sovereign Green Sukuk. This paper is the work of Dr. Aryo Sasongko from Bank Indonesia Institute, and also Dr. Ali Sakti from Department of Sharia Economic and Finance, Bank Indonesia. Dr. Aryo Sasongko will be the presenter, and you have also 15 minutes, Dr. Sasongko. Your presentation will start now.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to address this World Congress. I would like to talk in my report in Understanding the Environmental Risk Premium of Financing Securities, in this case, Sovereign Green Sukuk. Okay, yeah. Okay. Our article consists of 3 sections: introductory, model developments, and the last section is conclusion. Okay. The first background that we explain 3 terms that we will use in this discussion. The first is green bond, green sukuk, and sovereign green sukuk. Green bond is a security that should meet with green bond principles, which is the international principle. And green sukuk, it is a new debt class that should comply with both GBP and Sharia compliance. And sovereign green sukuk, it is the securities that to prove that government explicitly support the green sukuk. As a guidance, we have Zulkifli advice in 2015 that we should analyze the green sukuk into the mainstream of economic and finance, and in this case, we will discuss it in risk premiums. All right. The first motivation here is that the existing definition of systemic risk has nothing to do with the nature problems. We get the definition of the systemic risk, which is related to entire banking system or banking institution, nothing to do with the nature. And unfortunately, the potential environmental problem has nothing to do with the market risk. In fact, there is an environmentally triggered systemic risk, which was mentioned by Meadows and his friends in 1992, Daly in 2013, Pasqualino and his friends in 2019. And our research gap is there is a price difference between green debt class and conventional debt class, the price difference, where the green bonds yield was lower than that of non-green bonds. And Alessi and his friends found a negative risk premium, which is called greenium. And we couldn't find any explanation of this price difference. Right. Our research contribution is about finding the major role of that price difference. They are the environmental systemic risk and environmental reputational risk. To find those both risks, we visited the operational risk, the generic risk, which is called operational risk and reputational risk, where the operational and reputational is closely related. Usually, operational risk triggers the reputational risk. And in this case, we get that the environmental systemic risk leads to environmental reputational risk. Right? Okay. In the model definitions, I'm sorry, the model development, we introduce 3 definitions, 4 propositions, and 2 corollaries. Okay, all right, the first definition, the waste generation is the aggregate flows of waste and pollution which are byproducts of humans' economic activities for a certain periods. And the second definition is the accumulative waste is the balance of waste and pollution in the world, which consists of inflows and outflows. And waste generation is the inflows, and the restoration function or healing function is the outflows. To make it simple, we compare some terms in environmental risk domain, physics world, and bank accounts world. The waste generation resembles the velocity or speed or cash flow or mutations. And the accumulative waste is the distance or the balance or deposit amount in the bank account. Okay. The first proposition is about we develop the model of waste generation. It has 3 sources: the basic economic activities, non-basic economic activities, and because of the population. So we have 3 sources of waste generation. Yes, I mean because of the economic activities. And the second proposition, we develop the model into drift and diffusion, or this is the mean and this is the variance of waste generation. We did similar with the accumulative waste, the drift or the mean, and the diffusion or the variance. This is for the accumulative. All right, this is the figure 1 to show the sample of the waste generation, which is represented by greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide. This is the carbon dioxide generation year by year, which is increasing. And this is greenhouse gases. It is also increasing. And this is the accumulative waste, which is also increasing. represented by the median global temperature anomaly. Okay, we skip the first corollary. Now, the last definition, this is about environmental systemic risk. It is the probability of natural calamity and subsequent ecological disaster when the Earth can no longer withstand any additional waste. As can be seen here, this is the accumulative waste when the Earth, the nature, can no longer withstand any additional waste. This is the maximum the world can stand. There are some ecologists that estimate the systemic occurrence, but they may have different value of means or variance, so that's why we represent it in curve, normal curve. And this is the current accumulative waste. As can be seen in the second proposition, we develop the mean of the current curve and the variance, the width of this normal curve. And as can be seen from the first figure, that the accumulative waste is increasing. So the mean, I mean, this curve is shifting to the right. We can see here. All right. Okay. The more this curve shift to the right, the greater the probability that AT overlaps AES, the greater the probability of systemic occurrence. Right. We skip the second corollary. All right. The third proposition is that we develop the risk premium of environmental systemic risk premium. Here you are. Because of when the AT current accumulative waste overlaps the systemic accumulative waste. All right. This is the simulation of waste generation and accumulative waste in worsening condition. The accumulative waste is increasing, and the improving scenarios when the accumulative waste is decreasing. Okay. And this is the risk premium, the environmental risk, systemic risk premium, when this is improving and this is worsening. The worsening line is higher than, of course, than that of improving. All right. The fourth proposition is about environmental reputational systemic premium. This is the equation, and S is the ESG score of the green sukuk. The higher the green compliance score or ESG score of financing project, I mean the sukuk financings, the lower the environmental reputational risk, (VRR). Therefore, the green project, which has the GBP certificate, must suffer less than that of conventional debt. Right. This is the green sukuk. This is the accumulation of risk premiums. I mean the systemic and reputational. This is the improving condition, and this is the worsening condition. Of course, the higher the risk, the higher the yield. Okay, we arrive to the conclusions. Technology weakness, growing economy, free motion, pollutant motion cause the environmental risk, systemic risk, which exposing the Earth. From now on, the essential risk premiums of government debts are inflation, sovereignty. Sovereignty is country default, and environmental systemic. Now, not only sovereign green sukuk and green bonds, but all financial contracts also face the environmental systemic risk. This is a must. And then, assuming in some in this article, we developed the model assuming that in some regions, environmental systemic events occur together or almost simultaneously. Conversely, suppose the events are sporadic or not concurrent. Maybe the financial market participants may not consider the nature conservation as necessary. Okay. Now, this is the general recommendations. The environmentally friendly technology is vital to reduce waste, pollution, waste generation, accumulative waste, and so on. And the newly issued Sukuk should be green. It is necessary to mitigate the environmental reputational risk and comply with Sharia. We expect future research to develop an aggregate value or index of accumulative waste. This time series data is very important to develop the empirical research on environmental, systemic, and reputational risk. And the last, to remember a founding father of this knowledge, Thomas Robert Malthus. And thank you, IEA, and thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sasongko. The last paper is a stress test with simultaneous impact to the banking system. This is a collaboration work between Mr. Aditya Antataruna, Dr. Cecilia Anggadewi Harun, and Mr. Ramdhani. All of the authors come from Department of Macroprudential Policy, except Dr. Harun is from Department Economic and Monetary Policy in Bank Indonesia. The presenter of this paper is Mr. Aditya Antataruna. You have 15 minutes as well, and it will start now. Time is yours.
Thank you, Mas Iman, for your introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, selamat sore. In this time, I would like to talk about stress testing. Recent financial development shows us that it is high time for us, economists, to enhance our macroprudential or stress test and sensitivity to the real economy. Financial development shows that the world now is becoming more complex and more interconnected to each other. Financial entity could connect to the other financial entity across the world by using internet. And also the COVID-19 pushed further the development of technology. Thus, it's integrate the financial system to become a more complex system. So how should we develop stress testing which could help us, the financial authority, to at least estimate the correct estimation of a shock to the financial system? Here, I'm going to present our proposition on how we integrate those concerns. The paper will be presented by me, and as you can see, Ms. Cecilia and Mr. Ramdhani is here also. So the paper will talk in 8 sessions, start from introduction, and then we will continue to motivation, objective, and also literature study, and will be concluded in conclusion. Let us see the introduction first. Stress test has been used to determine the level of resilience of a bank when facing a severe but plausible scenario. In 2008, we still remember when the Fed announced their stress testing result of the distressed banks when facing the global financial crisis. And it helped the crisis in the US to subside. So stress testing has the power to communicate to the people that the banking system or the financial system is okay when they're facing a certain severe but plausible scenario. Although current stress testing only focus on individual banks' resilience, it doesn't consider how financial system has developed over the year. We understand that now the technology is super high, super complex compared to what we have in, let's say, 5-10 years ago. Now people can easily lend to people from other side of the world. Or maybe now we understand that we can have what we call the peer-to-peer lending. It makes the financial system complexity increases in a significantly way. So at least we have two major threats on our current stress testing framework. The first one is the concentration risk, and the second one is the amplification and propagation risk. Those two risks might lead our current stress testing framework to underestimate or overestimating the bank's capital level. Yeah, because we are modeling what is complex into a very simple models, which is might lead to the under or overestimation of the bank capital shock based on a certain scenario. So this motivation is bring us to enhance our macroprudential stress testing. So we hope by implementing the simultaneous shock into our current stress testing framework, we could at least try to capture the immediate effect of macroeconomics and sectoral variable, and also the risk coming from the banking sector itself, where we also consider that there's a possibility that amplification and propagation are happening in the right states of the financial system. So maybe some of you are already familiar with our current stress testing framework, where we only imply the amplification and propagation mechanism in the contagion stress test, which might lead to the underestimating the capital impact of the shock. And also the second motivation and objection is to design an early horizontal impact, which include the risk amplification and propagation, of course, by using what we have currently is interbank network. And also, we also still consider other possibility which might coming from the asset pricing and other possible channel such as information channels. As we know that in 2008, information channels played a huge role to bringing down the US capital market. Okay, so the value added of this paper is to install propagation and amplification into the current stress testing framework, especially in Bank Indonesia stress testing framework. So the framework could at least try to capture what is really happening in the financial system. Okay, literature study of stress testing sometimes only involve a systemic shock of a certain idiosyncratic distress, where a group of banks with similar business model might cause other banks to go under pressure and cause financial instability, which was argued by Diamond Davig in 1983 and then continued by Friedman and Swart. And later in 2008, Anderson et al. Tries to estimate the impact of implied scenario, not only regard to banking system, but also to the real economy. So this framework is what we call the macroprudential stress testing framework. So these two literature on stress testing only focusing a certain amount of shock which happen only later in the stress testing framework in the term of amplification and propagation. First, they only applied it to bank by bank without considering how its banking shock, its banking distress condition might affect other banking industry, banking in the individual. And also here we have a literature study on amplification and propagation. The first literature study tells us that horizontal impact may already have taken place before the individual impact happened. So here, Bob Shiller said that especially when a systemic shock happens in the banking system, the shock might already have begun before the individual impact of each bank. So it might be because of the erratic of economy or the information channel. As we can understand that in 2008, information channels played a huge role in bringing all the capitals, the US capital market down, and then later to the banking system. As you can see that there are several literature also talking that it might be too late to instill propagation and amplification into the current stress testing framework at the end of the phase, or maybe later when we consider that the shock happen only to bank, and then later estimate the impact through contingent stress testing. So how do we try to create that simultaneous impact to the banking system? We try to implement what we call a copula methodology. So the copula methodology is a methodology which consider every distress condition to other entity which related to the bank, and re-estimate or readjust the default profile or the probability of default of a certain bank based on those informations. Global financial crisis in 2008 showed us that Gaussian copula failed to calculate the price of financial security with small probability of default, both complex dependent structure. Here shown that the current stress testing framework might be a little bit too late or underestimating what will actually happen in the financial system. Okay, so by using copula, we try to enhance our current sequential framework of solvency stress test. Suppose that we have two risks. The first one is credit risk and the market risk. Those two risks will increase or decrease banks' profit based on their banking portfolio. If the banking profit is decreasing, it will also decreasing banks' equity. And later, it will also cause a drop in capital adequacy ratio, or what we call as a ratio between equity and risk-weighted asset. If the estimated bank CAR is below the hurdle rate or a certain threshold, let's say we have 8% of the threshold. If the bank's CAR falls under 8%, and then we say that the bank is failed. After we declare the bank is failed, then later we imply the amplification and propagation. As you could see here, that amplification and propagation only installed in the later phase or the end phase of the stress testing framework, which might be a little bit too late. So here we try to install the copula construction, which consider our possibility of the shock to affect other shock at the beginning of the shock before it affect bank. Here we consider several factors. The first one is the bank idiosyncratic factor or default profile. Here we say it as in ZI, or what we understand that the bank default profiles sometimes reflected as in their non-performing loan. Okay, so the systemic factor or the other simultaneous shock might come from the interaction between macroeconomic or sectoral variable. Those variables will adjust the bank default profile by using this formula. As you could see, XMIG, which stands for the macro shock, will adjust the bank default profile based on the interaction of macro variable. And then later we have also similar adjustment by using the XSIH, which we understand that it's also an adjustment coming from the sectoral. So here we have what we call as an adjusted bank default profile. So the adjusted bank default profile already accounted what might be already happening in the financial system before we imply those shocks to the banking system. Here we also understand that after we adjust what we call the adjusted bank default profile, and then we can proceed to use our current stress testing balance sheet approach framework, this one. So instead of using the shock only separated, we have an adjusted default profile with us. We already considered the interaction between bank itself and also the macro and the sectoral variable. So we hope that we could at least try to capture the complexity of financial development that we have now. Okay, this is just how we try to see which macroeconomic or sectoral variable, or even the bank, plays as the central node that will play a huge role in adjusting the bank's profile. So by using this Payer-Coppola construction, we could see that in the 3, 4, or the N3 of the estimation, we have what the relation of only 2 nodes, which might basically could represent all the relation between either macroeconomics, sectoral, or the banking system itself. So by using this tree, we know that which macro or sectoral variable should we shock to at least try to understand what will happen in the financial system when there is a shock happen to the financial system, of course. Here I give an explanation of how we see the Coppola construction simplified what we have a complex interaction between macro variables. So as you could see, what was a jumbled interaction between macro variable now represented in a very simpler interaction where financial sector play the central node, as you could see here, a financial sector. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that due to
2 minutes left, Mr. Taruna.
Got it, Mr. Iman. Thank you so much for your remaining. So here you can see that we don't show the banking industry Coppola estimation because I'm deeply sorry that it's confidential, but basically you understand the idea. Okay, so here we try to give you the idea of why we should know which sector or which macro variable play a huge role in adjusting banks' default profile. If we have a shock to financial sector, almost all variables shifted to the left skew, where we understand that it's a positive shock to the system. Whilst if we compare to the consumption sector, which is not the central node here, the response of other variable to the shock of consumption, it's a little bit lower compared to financial sector. Well, also they are still responding. As you could see, some of the variables still shifted to the left, but if we compare the magnitude and the skewness of the distribution is totally different when we compare to the financial sector. Here we just want to show you the simulation result when we are using the simultaneous impact. So we apply a COVID-19 and financial market shock into the banking system. We're using a financial simultaneous stress test framework. The stress test results show that the impact of COVID-19 crisis followed by financial market shock could be enormous. As you could see from the NPL dynamic here, the NPL shoot up quite highly, and it's almost reached what already happened in Asian financial crisis in 1998. This result confirmed that the existence of panics, or what we call the amplification and propagation of shock in this period, is there. Okay, so the conclusion is the sequential stress testing framework might be underestimating the shock of certain scenario or certain shock in this period, especially where we understand that the recent financial development caused the financial system to be highly complex, highly interconnected to each other. So the framework considers possible shock amplification and propagation in both macroeconomic and also the banking sector, as we seen from the presentation, that we understand that a shock to a certain macro or sectoral variable may cause a chain reaction of shock in the financial system. It's not play a major role in transmitting shock, of course. Even if we have a shock to a non-central node, we understand in our slide that consumption, even though it's not a central node, it still have a huge impact to the financial system. So when considering shock and amplification and propagation, COVID-19 and financial market simultaneous shock caused a significant impact to the banking system if the shock materialized. So all in all, we understand that it is high time for us, economists, and also central banker to at least enhance our stress testing framework with maybe applying the simultaneous stress testing framework. Thank you so much and stay safe, everyone. I'll give back the floor to Mas Iman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all presenters. Now we are going to take some questions from the audience. First question from Mr. Sahminan for Mr. Indawan. He asked a couple questions. How do you measure financial development? And the second question is, how do you make sure that there is no endogeneity problem and reverse causality? Second question goes to Dr. Sasongko from Nareswari. She asked about the figure 1 in Dr. Sasongko presentation. The figure 1 has shown some measured pollutants, but why don't you regress some data to exercise your model? The third question from Mosumi Das from National Council of Applied Economic Research, New Delhi, India, for Mr. Aditya Taruna. He needs clarification. How can an event like a pandemic be differentiated from other catastrophic events and modeling be done accordingly? Also, is it advisable to classify the pandemic as an environmental risk? Will such extreme events seriously distort the distribution of the green compliance score? So that's the first three questions from three people. Can you answer very briefly? The first one for Mr. Indawan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gunadi. The question by Dr. Sahminan said, how do you measure financial development? I use the measure of financial development here is the new measurement constructed by the IMF. It is comprised of 6 index of financial development, and it has been used by the IMF for publication publication there. Lately, the IMF used this measure as we call it official measurement of financial index, because it's measured not only the aggregate measure of financial development in terms of banking over GDP, but also they measure they measure the functional operational figure from the financial system, which is it comprise more comprehensive measurement in the financial system, which is not only measure the financial development, but also they also measure the financial institution, which is the banking system, and the financial market, which is the debt and the stock market, and then each of them are elaborated more in its debt, its financial institution debt measured by banking over GDP, financial institution access in terms of the inclusion of the financial market, financial institution, which is mostly from the ATM or the branch banking, and then financial institution efficiency in the form of the return, the financial indicator. On overall, this new financial development index is comprised more comprehensive measure of the financial system. And then how do I measure there's no indigeneity problem and reverse causality? Actually, when I use this panel GMM, the dynamic panel GMM, you see that when we use the dynamic financial the dynamic panel GMM, it includes on the right hand side is the lack of the dependent variable. From the literature I read about from example from the Baltagi and the other literature from the panel data said that this inclusion of the lag variable, it also can be avoid the engineering problem, because it includes the lack of the variable. And also in the GMM, the dynamic panel GMM, it's also include the instrumental variable, which I use the first difference of the right hand side. As far as I know from the literature set, it is also can avoid the endogeneity problem in the model. That is why I use dynamic panel GMM. I guess that's my reply. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Sasongko, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This is to answer Nareswari first. Okay. Yes, we get some time series data of greenhouse gases and average world temperature, but we do not have any functional waste generation of its sources, such as land subsidence due to declining groundwater level, pollutants causing climate change, etc. Neither do we have any unique waste generation source nor misspending natural resource data, such as methane, production of organic waste, toxic gases of burning plastic, pump water of ground, etc. So instead, we develop a model of 3 material groups, which I have mentioned earlier, that it consists of basic consumption activities, non-basic consumption activities, and due to the populations. And then I hope it can answer. And the question from Pak Sahminan about the models, yes, I can answer that we established the concept to answer what caused the price difference. So we established 4 things. They are waste generation, accumulative waste, and then environmental systemic risk premium, and environmental reputational risk premium. Because we talk about the sovereign green sukuk, which depends on the yield curve, and the yield curve consists of several layers of risk premium. So we discuss it in risk premiums. And as condition, we can simplify it as waste generation is in physics world, waste generation is the speed, accumulative waste is the distance of the car, and environmental systemic events is the length of the road. When you pass it, you go anywhere out of the asphalt hardening roads, and you get the problems. And the risk premium, the environmental systemic risk premium, expose all debt classes, including the equities. But the problem with the ESG scores, which expose to the environmental reputational risk premium, it is the difference. Okay, and then I hope this would answer Pak Sahminan. And then to Mr. Mosumi, this is a good question. That's right. The pandemic, as environmental risk. Okay, the
I think-
environmental.
I think the most of me question goes to the Mr. Taruna, Pak Aryo.
I thought, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Pak Aryo. Mr. Aditya.
Thank you, Mas Iman. So, Mr. Mosumi asked us about if it's good to differentiate a pandemic aside from other catastrophic events, such as global financial crisis or the Great Depression in 1930. No, the answer is no. So, as long as the shock is severe enough but plausible to the financial system. So, what does that mean? So, the shock is severe enough to cause the financial system to have a severe impact or a significant impact to the financial system. Let's say that it caused the GDP to drop to a certain level, which caused the consumption to deteriorate and creating a huge ruckus or a huge impact into the financial system. So if we understand the COVID-19 impact, let's say, since the paper was done in early 2020, where COVID was just its beginning, we didn't know the impact of the COVID-19 before. So we create a scenario where we see the COVID-19 will cause all the financial system to collapse. Now, the question about should we include natural disaster as our scenario? Yes, if us as an economist see that the natural disaster might cause a huge shock to the financial system. Let's say there is a massive earthquake and cause the economic to collapse, and see that the possibility of the earthquake might coming in, let's say 1 or 2 months from now. So using those scenarios, we want to see if the financial system could withstand the shock of the earthquake. And we use this stress test scenario. So it's depend on how do we want to see, or how do we want to assess our financial system resilience to a certain scenario. It could be COVID-19, it could be a natural disaster, or it could be another event which we don't understand how to handle, which might cause the systemic risk impact to the financial system. So, Mr. Mosumi, I hope that my answer satisfy your urge to learn more on how we create the scenario in stress testing. Thank you so much, Mas Iman.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all audience for your enthusiasm with your many questions. However, due to time limitation, we will finish the session. All other questions will be answered directly by the presenters. Once again, I would like to thank all presenters and audience for such a wonderful discussion. And last but not least, my sincere gratitude also goes to International Economic Association for giving us the time to present our works in this prestigious event. I'll stop now, and good day to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Terima kasih ya teman-teman